Welcome to our mobile testing webinar. I am your host, Stephen Davis of Calleo Software. Calleo are an HP Gold partner and reseller of their software tools. We have significant experience of HP's testing tools going back more than 20 years. Shortly, I will be introducing Rob Stock of Micro Focus, who is a testing tool specialist. And for those of you not aware, Micro Focus completed its merger with HP Software in September 2017. Today, we want to share with you an overview of HPE Mobile Center and how it can be a key component of creating a great user experience. Mobile Center provides an end-to-end test and quality lab using real devices and emulators to help you build great mobile apps that are fully tested based on extensive real-world mobile testing, live monitoring, and user insights. We will give you a high-level overview of some of the key benefits of Mobile Center, and the slides will be shared after the event. We will be taking questions at the end, so please make a note of any you have as you go through. To submit the questions, you should be able to see a question mark icon towards the right-hand side of the screen. And now I'd like to introduce you to Rob Stock of Micro Focus, who will talk to you more about Mobile Center. Over to you, Rob.
Thanks very much, Stephen. So good morning to everybody. As Stephen alluded to, the capabilities of Mobile Center are quite vast, to be honest with you. So it's impossible for us to go through all of those in such a arena as this. But what we wanted to do is give you some of the more important areas, that we're tackling here. So the first thing to understand is that testing a mobile application is about the user experience, and it's their perception, a user's perception of how that app performs, how it functions, what the security is. Everybody's got different devices. In real world conditions, people are connected to different networks. There might be Wi-Fi or 2.5G or whatever it may well be, but all these things come together to give that perception, and that is person's user experience. So it's really about understanding all those different variables that different users are going to have. So the first thing to do when we're looking at Mobile Center is to talk about lab management, and how we can start to use these devices. So the easiest way to think of Mobile Center is think of it as a gateway, and in its very simplistic form. So on one side of the gateway you have testing tools, and on the other side you have real devices or emulators that you can use. It can be deployed in all sorts of different ways. One of those is to have a Mobile Center server with devices physically connected to it via USB cables. Another way is to deploy gateways around your organization. So a gateway effectively is just it's a laptop with a piece of software installed on it and a device connected to its USB port. Once that device is then connected, it becomes available to the pool of devices that anybody can use. The other alternative is to connect it to Amazon's device farm, so you can with your own AWS account sign up for the device farm and use those tools, those devices, directly through to Mobile Center. So the easiest way to kind of bring life to that is to actually show you what it looks like within the product. So here what I'm doing is I'm just signing into Mobile Center here to look at the admin console. And the first thing that I see when I sign in are the different devices that I've got. So we've got some grayed out devices there. They're the ones which I've had plugged in the past. They're not available now. But I have this one here. I can go in and look at this. This is a Samsung tablet, so I can look at what CPU it's got, what operating system version it's at, who's reserved it. Perhaps somebody wants to reserve it for a week next Wednesday or something, and actions, so restart the device, etc. I mean, these devices may well be in a completely different office to me, so it's about being able to manage this. These could be anywhere around the world, to be honest. So this device, I can then interact with it just as if it was the device in hand. I can go to a home screen. I can open different folders here. I just go in, open Chrome, and it performs just as it would as if it was in my hand. And what we've done a huge amount of work. You can see there down the bottom left-hand corner, talking about the latency. There's about 10 milliseconds, between me pressing the device and something happening, which is like incredibly fast, compared with competitor solutions. So they're the devices. Here we're just looking at the apps that I've got installed. So I can filter them via the app type, Android, iOS, etc. Or I can then go in and look at those different things. So here we've got an Android app. We can look at the different versions of it. I can just install it here once, and then Mobile Center will push that devices out to the relevant devices that I wanted to. So you don't have to install lots of apps on all those different devices. Make management very easy. I can create device groups, give them to different teams, isolate just certain teams with those devices. I can create usernames. I can create reservations, and so all this is making that whole device management piece very simple to do, very simple and easy to look after. So that's a quick overview of the lab management piece. The next thing is to look at simulation. So here we talked about how these devices are connected to different servers, PCs around the world, etc. But they're obviously static, and obviously in the real world you've got people moving around doing different things. It may well be that they're getting phone calls to their devices, SMSs, whatever it may well be. So we need to be able to simulate these types of activities, without the device being used. So here, this is one option. Here we can create as part of the test. Halfway through the test, the phone rings. The application goes to the background. Does it come back, etc. Similarly with a text message, this is just normal things that people do as they're using your application. As I say, send the app to the back. It may be we'll use the camera, to take a photo of something. I can inject a picture in there. It may well be, a QR code that we're scanning, or whatever it may well be. Or there's the location thing. If we've got an app where branches near me type thing. So here I am, and I've just opened Google Maps. This is where I am right now. But if I then put in some GPS coordinates and say OK to that, give it a second or so, and then search for my location, you'll see that it takes me to a completely different part of the world. There we are on the Toronto waterfront. So it just makes it very easy to, if like I say, if you want to search branches near me or whatever it may well be that your application is doing, it's very easy to do just without that device being actually moved. So the next part, again, I talked about at the beginning about how Mobile Center is effectively a gateway. On the one side, you've got real devices or emulators. On the other side, you've got testing tools. So, the important thing here is to support a broad range of those testing tools. Now, here, what you're looking at is the Micro Focus testing tool portfolio. So behind each one of these boxes is a bunch of tools. So for example, behind the functional testing we have unified functional testing or lean FT. Behind the performance box we have load runner, performance center, storm runner, etc. and all those different tools. So we obviously integrate, Mobile Center obviously integrates with all of this portfolio. It does, and you would have expected it to. But what we've also done is put a lot of work into integrating it with other things. So not just our tools, other people's tools. Be they open source or paid tools. So IntelliJ, Visual Studio, Eclipse, for example, as IDEs, CI/CD servers, Jenkins, Bamboo, etc. And different code bases, Java, C#, different testing methodologies, different browsers, different, source code repositories, all those types of things. and many more too. But the point is that we wanted to integrate it with the broadest range and still doing that. So for example, things like Selenium, or Calabash, BDD type tools, or Appium, just to kind of focus on Appium, for example. So Appium's a popular open source mobile testing tool, which people are actively using to test their mobile applications. So we wanted to integrate Mobile Center with that. So Appium's good at what it does. It's very useful in testing mobile applications, but it does have its limitations. One of those is that you've got to have a separate server instance per device that you're testing. So if you're testing, a dozen devices, you need to have a dozen server instances. If you're testing iOS devices, then you need to run it on a Mac, and you might not have Macs available. So all those things. So what we wanted to do is you kind of integrate that with Mobile Center, let people use Appium to test those devices, but give them the flexibility of all that lab management, all that device management, which I talked about before, all those automated application deliveries. So it just makes things a lot easier to manage. So here, just to give you a quick overview of that. So here I've got IntelliJ launched, and this is an Appium script, which I've got. This is just a standard Appium script. There's no changes with that. So this is a banking application which I've got. So this launches the banking application in the script, does a login, does a money transfer, confirms the transfer, and then goes through and logs out of the application, closes the application down, and goes back to the device script. And like I say, this is just a normal Appium test. Nothing different about that. The only difference that we've got here is that we've got a few connection parameters at the top. This is just connecting to our Mobile Center server. So we just fill out the relevant, details, URLs, etc., of the server that we want to connect to, and then we can just go ahead and run it, just as a normal test, no other differences. So here we're going to run it. The other thing with Appium is that you don't actually, when its test is running, you don't see what's happening. Here with Mobile Center, I can go and monitor that, so I can actually see the test. So you can see here this device, I've got it locked. The lock screen comes up to say that it's in use, and this is the test running through on this device. And like I say, this device could be, a different part of the world. So here we've got the login. It's done the transfer. We've got 5. I'm going to hit the thing's going to hit the transfer button. It'll come back and say that it's the money failed to transfer. So the script will acknowledge that, say OK, go to the menu, log out of the application and back to the device home screen. So that's just the test. That's the test running through. And if I now just swap back to IntelliJ, you can see here that we've got the results for that being recorded. So we've got login completed, money transfer, it started the transaction, money transfer completed, results, money failed to transfer. So all those things. That's our test. That's just the normal Appium test there running with Mobile Center. But like I say, if it's if this was an iOS application, we don't need a Mac PC, or we don't need, we can monitor it whilst it's doing, and we can have that one server. We don't need to deploy lots of version Appium servers to be able to run those tests. We can do it with any devices that we've got available to us. So that was functional testing, and like I say, we've got, that was showing you with Appium. Obviously, we work with our own functional testing tools, just as easily. I just wanted to make the point there with an open source tool. So that was functional testing. The next important thing to look at is security testing. Security testing is one of the things which obviously people do very last minute. Kind of 10 minutes before anything goes live, they decide to security test it. So what we wanted to do is give people the tools to be able to test earlier in the life cycle. So here, if I come into my Mobile Center server, here I'm looking at the applications that I've got. I've got this Advantage Shopping application down here, which if I click on it, we get the ability to go in and monitor what we call the extended services. So here, the first part is security scan. So when you purchase Mobile Center comes with tools like Fortify on Demand. So you actually get the ability to do scans, out of the box. Here I've got this Advantage app, and all I do is that I'll come in here as soon as I've got build. Within the first build of this, I can just say run a security scan. It will do its security scan, and then it will upload it to our security teams, and they'll do some manual work and some automated work on that, and basically compile a report. Once that report is then ready, which takes about a couple of days, once that report's ready, you'll get alerted that it's available, and then all you need to do is come in and hit the download button. Then that will download your report. So this is a demo application which I've got here, but this is a real report based on that demo application. So you can see here at the overview page, it's given me the threats broken down by critical through to low. It's given me like OWASP top 10s, and where they fit, what's the biggest ones, and what impact that may well be, and any remediation techniques that I want to take. So here on the next page, it goes into details about what those issues are that it's found. So here we've got some low impact. There's Android debuggable issues, unencrypted connections, and weak cryptography. And then it goes through and explains what those things are, whereabouts it is available, and what you need to do to fix it, which lines of code. So here the unencrypted connections that we've got. It gives me the URLs of the pages, the code, and where I need to fix them. And it's similar to with a weak cryptography. And then it goes into informational things. One of the things it's found here that I've got a lot of login available, and obviously it's not the best to maintain lots of login in your application. So it goes through, and then finally it gives us the information about about how I need to what it means to me, and how to fix these things. So that's security testing, and like I say, built into Mobile Center, right from the start, and it's very simple to use, but nonetheless hugely powerful, and you can start implementing that as part of your earlier on in your life cycle. Okay, so that was functional testing and security testing. The next big topic to talk about is performance testing. So people have been using our tools, Load Runner, Performance Center, Storm Runner, etc., to performance test mobile applications for many years. But what they've been doing is they're testing the back end of those mobile applications. What we're talking about here is using those tools then to performance test on a device. So this is, being able to test the performance. And we kind of recommend that you probably want to do about 90% of your performance testing on those back-end systems, but maybe 10% on devices. And this is a great example of user experience, because when users in the real world are out using their devices, they're on different networks, they're on different devices. That's why some people on the app stores can say, yeah, this is great application, and other people say, well, no, it's slow, it's rubbish, because they've all got different devices, they're all in different areas, etc. So it's about being able to understand those different things. So what we've done here is not only just integrate it with our performance testing tools, but we've integrated it with our network virtualization tools, so that you can then start to performance test over networks which make sense to the user. So just to explain that, what we're talking about here, I mean, this is not going to come as a shock to anybody. This is actually an SAP mobile application, and you can see that we're measuring performance over the different stages, so login, insert, check price, etc. And over more latent networks, so WANs, 3Gs, etc. Things are slower, and everybody understands that, and nobody's surprised by it. But what people do when they're actually testing mobile applications, or applications which are going to work over more latent networks is this. So they'll have a business goal. The business goal will be to have, in this instance, 66 transactions a minute. And what they'll do is they'll create that transaction. So a transaction is, in this scenario, a login, a file read, a log out, and they'll replay that transaction as many times as they can within a minute, and then they'll fire up 10 virtual users, as you can see down there, left-hand side, and they'll replay those things. And that's their test. That's how people test these applications, and that's how they've been doing it for many, many years. Which is all well and good until you start to then, instead of working at LAN speeds that they're doing, then to use that over a mobile network, things are slower. We know they're slower. So these transactions are now a lot slower. And you can see that there's a lot more concurrency there. So we don't get quite the same amount of white space that we had previously. And because the transactions are slower, they're not just slower on the user's device, they're actually slower on your back-end servers too. So they're consuming more CPU cycles. And Best Buy in the States did a great write-up about they had a Black Friday event, and their servers fell over for a couple of days. But the outcome of it was that although they'd performance tested it, they hadn't performance tested it with mobile users, and they were surprised just how many mobile users came in, and wanted to access their sites for this very reason. And coming back to this scenario that we're talking about here, previously we'd said that we wanted, or the business had said they wanted 66 transactions a minute. The result here is that we've actually only got 22 transactions a minute, which is obviously not what we wanted in the first place. So kind of invalidating the first performance test. If we did want 66 transactions a minute, we'd have to create a test like this. Again, absolutely nothing like what we wanted in the first place. Another way to look at that is like this. So here we have a couple of graphs. The one on the left-hand side there is without network conditions, so basically LAN speeds. And we've got less than 10 seconds response time and more than 500 users. And you can see the device metrics there. Everything in the world is good. Plenty of capacity. And then the one on the right-hand side is exactly the same test, but completely different conditions. Here we've got over 40 seconds response time and less than 200 users. So there's nothing like the kind of user base that we've got. But for all those reasons, it's kind of beginning to max out our systems. So being aware of those network conditions is hugely important. And so what network virtualization does, which network virtualization comes with Mobile Center, is it gives you the ability to record those different transactions. So you can see there, on the first thing, we're monitoring different parts of our application. So we've got the home screen, create an account, etc. Based on 4G with the blue, 3G with the green, and then we've recorded a script riding on a train in London, to monitor those real-world conditions. So we can do that, and we can then drill down to understand what impact those conditions have had. So what this does is it kind of network virtualization gives you 100 points for your application, and then takes points away, then deducts points based on issues that it finds. So we've got an overall rating there of an F, which obviously isn't very good. And it's down to optimizing the application. So it will give you remediation options. So you can click on these things and it will expand them. So where it says reduce the size of your images, it may well be maybe this is an iPad app that we've got. And there's no point having an image that's bigger than the screen resolution of an iPad, for example, because it's going to take longer to come down. So it's about understanding those different things, using things like JavaScript intelligently within the heading sections, leveraging any proxy caching you might have, One of the things that people do quite often is that they'll download a lot of small things sequentially, so that even though they're higher latent networks, they're not making the use of all that bandwidth that's available to them, so it slows things down. Another problem that people typically do is that they'll download an asset, whatever that may well be, at one stage, then the user will click another button on the mobile device, and it will download the same things again, rather than caching those things, which takes time. We actually worked with a bank, and they were getting slated for their mobile application because it was taking time. It was literally taking up to 40 or 50 seconds on different screens. Working with them using network virtualization, they got that 40, 50 seconds down to about 3 seconds, which is like a huge benefit. So this is remediation options. And the other thing I talked about, recording a script of London whilst riding on a train. We have a mobile application which comes with network virtualization, and you can download that, and you can get on a train and go to London or wherever you want to do, walk around your office car park, and record those real network conditions. There's an example of it. So once you've done that, once it's done, recorded those conditions, you give it a server that you want to connect to. So here we've done hpe.com, but you can change that to any server that you like. And it will record those conditions, and then you email yourself the results. Those results you can then plug into Mobile Center and network virtualization and record your performance test based on that real-world activity, which is hugely powerful to be able to do that and to be able to understand those things. And this is really, as I said before, it's about user experience, but it's also about emulating those real-world conditions that people are testing against. So that's we've done functional testing, security testing, performance testing. The next major thing to look at is mobile analytics. So the first part of this was really talking about that testing phase. But this is the kind of whole DevOps feedback of Mobile Center, being able to give you the ability not to monitor it over tests, but monitor it over when you go live. So it may well be that you want to deploy an application to people within your organization for a couple of weeks, let them use it, or deploy it to an app store. And what we do is Mobile Center integrates with AppPulse Mobile, which again comes with Mobile Center, to give you the ability to monitor those things. So the first part here is the user sentiment. I'm looking at the extended services again, just where I saw the security scan above it. This is user sentiment. So this is saying that you've deployed your application, and this is what people are saying about it on the different app stores. So it goes through and analyzes the data, kind of does some big data analysis on it and breaks it down into performance, appearance, usability, stability, etc. And records what people are saying about your application, how they're using it. Here, this is only a demo application, but nonetheless, we've got 440 positive comments and 800 odd negative comments, which obviously isn't what we want, and we can improve that. One of the ways that we can improve that too is by monitoring that real world usage. So with AppPulse Mobile, this is then bringing in. So here we've got a list of those different devices. So we've got people using Samsung Galaxies, we've got people using Motorola Droids. It's looking at the performance that we've got, battery performance, stability, crashes, cellular data usage. This is the kind of the dashboard to report those figures. But if we actually go into AppPulse Mobile and look at how that's being collected, this is all then fed back. So like I say, this comes with Mobile Center. So here we've got the ability to look at our application and the kind of headline views of what we've got. And again, this has a Fundex score. So you get 100 points. Points get deducted based on issues that users find. So these are real users that we're looking at. We've got how many daily users. We've got we can access information over periods of time, etc. We've lost performance there, points for performance, stability, resources. So we can then go in and look at the performance issues. What's the issues that we've got? So here's the average response of different screens that we've got. So 9.1 seconds there at the top, down to 2.2 seconds. We can see that. But how that measures on different devices, different OSs. So this is an Android app. We've got various flavors of Android there, you know, and we can then look at those different devices based on the speed that they've got, but also device. So there, that 10.7 seconds for that LG Pro at the top, and the Sony Xperia down the bottom, 1.9 seconds. And then we're filtering it here by different, Lollipop in this case. But you can see there, that's what I mean about user experience. 10 seconds on one device, you know, 1 point something seconds on a different device. So here we're looking then, you know, we can understand the things, but the next thing we want to understand is stability. Here we've got some crashes, and we can see that we've got 3 screens: check deposit accounts and help screen that it's crashed on. We can go into the help screen, look at the crash logs. They're very important for a developer to fix things, but also the crash trail. That's massively important to understand how the crash happened, what the user did, what screens they went to be able to understand, you know, to remediate it. And much like, you know, this is, like I say, it's the whole kind of DevOps feedback. Just like with performance, we've got the devices here with crashes. We can then, perhaps we're not testing with these devices, so we can start to integrate, you know, bring it a kind of closed loop flow, integrate with, you know, those different devices to be able to understand how they test in the first place. Here we've got resources, so cellular data usage and battery usage. So here we can see the battery usage there, 1.9% a minute drainage with one device, all the way through to 0.08 with that Samsung Galaxy. Again, you know, this is the whole kind of user experience. We can then say, well, you know, let's take this Lollipop and see what device is there, you know, how they're affected. And then, like I say, start to integrate those devices, get those devices, perhaps we're not testing with, you know, that LG Nexus or that OnePlus, whatever it may well be. So we can then, you know, integrate those devices back into Mobile Center. Here we're looking at cellular data. So you can see 45.9% of its usage is on that one particular screen. You know, perhaps we want to, you know, there's nothing worse than, you know, using up people's data plans on their devices by inefficient cellular data usage. Here we're looking at the user flow. So this is what do people actually do with your application. You might have put in a load of functionality that people don't necessarily know where there is. So we can see that people went from, you know, the login screen to the accounts to the transaction or brokerage. Where we've got that orange piece, that's where people have left the application. You can see there we've got some of the screens there that we've got where the device actually crashed. So then we can go in and look at that sentiment analysis as you saw the feedback before. This is where we can see that, and we can compare it, not just the reviews that we're getting, you know, based on the, you know, all those different categories, but we can compare it with our competitors. So, you know, we're comparing it there with HSBC's mobile banking application. You know, what are people saying about ours, and what people are saying about how we're working, you know, within the frame of the industry. So here we've got the usage overview. You know, we've got version 1, version 2, version 3, whatever it is of our application. Here we can see what people have, you know, what people are using, you know, which versions they're using, and, you know, lastly, whereabouts they are in the world. So we zoom into Europe. You can see we've got people there from Spain, Germany, but also people from the States, you know, Canada, etc. So that's a quick overview of AppPulse Mobile, and that's, like I say, that's the whole kind of DevOps feedback of, you know, you've done your testing in the first place. This is then starting to give you an idea of how that closed loop should work back into your testing. And like I say, this again comes with Mobile Center. So finally, you know, just to kind of give an overview of this is then to look at enterprise readiness, you know, which is very important. You know, so things like immediate swap. Once you go out and get a device, with Mobile Center you can just plug it in. You plug it into a USB cable, or you know, whether it's on a gateway, as I talked about, or actually on the server, and it will sort itself out. It's all plug and play. So it will download a small connector and it will set itself up. You don't have to do anything anything more than that. Speed of interaction is hugely important. If you're testing, there's nothing more frustrating building an automated test. If you click on your PC and you've got a phone, in a different part of the world, you need that to be, hugely fast. So speed of interaction, we've done a lot of work being able to do this, and it's way ahead of any industry competitors that we've got. Things like giving people user authentication. We've got all these devices, so we can enable people to be able to see these reserved devices. It might be that we've got a bunch of iPads that I want to reserve for a test that we're doing later on in the week. I can do that. We talked about the real world analytics, understanding how real networks, real performance, analyzing and monitoring all those things, and being able to distribute those applications. So we don't want to, if we've got, say we have a dozen devices, we don't want to be able to have to install, perhaps we're getting a new application every day. We don't want to have to install that on a dozen devices. So Mobile Center will do it for you. You just install it once within Mobile Center, and it will distribute those things. You integrate it with LDAP, device groups, and the application security as we've talked about. So that's a very kind of whistle-stop tour of the capabilities that Mobile Center can give you. At this point, I want to pass it back to Stephen to look at some questions and conclude.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Great. We've got time for some questions. We've already had some in, but if you have further questions, please look at the little icon which shows the question mark in a speech bubble and submit your questions in the message box. So Rob, what's our first question?
Okay, we've got the first one here. How many devices will Mobile Center support? So in terms of devices, there is no theoretical limit. I mean, we've got deployments that are supporting many hundreds of devices. So so there's no limit as to what you can deploy. Another one is, how quickly do you support new handsets and operating systems? Okay, so that's a good question actually. So when we're obviously part of things like Apple's developer program, so we'll get access to early betas, etc., and we will support all those devices by the time they're launched. When a new version of iOS comes out, it's been architected in such a way that we only have to do a minor amount of work to be able to support those new OSs. So pretty quickly is the answer. And it's impossible to say exactly, but all in the past it's always been by launch of those things. There's another one here that says, when functional testing, is it possible to monitor device vitals, e.g. CPU? Okay, so yeah, that's another good question. When you are functional testing, it is important to be able to monitor those things. So the answer is yes. So things like you can be doing something, you can monitor what the CPU is doing at a particular stage, how much memory is available, free memory, etc. To there. So yeah, that's an important part of your test. Do we support device gestures? Okay, yeah. So that things like pinching and zooming, yes, all those things are supported within our testing tools. So it's a couple more. One of them is, what OS versions do we go back to? Okay, so with Android, I believe it's Android 4.2 and above we support. iOS is 7.x and above, so that would have been the iPhone 4 and above that we support, and Windows 8.1 and above. Now, just finally, just to wrap this up with one more question. So with UFT or LeanFT, do the object spies work? Okay, yeah, so that's another good question. So with our testing tools, UFT and LeanFT, when you're building up a test, you have an object spy which you can click on basically your application, and it will recognize what that object is and build the code. So it's exactly the same with Mobile Center. When we're using that, we can use those exact tools. We can click on a representation of the application, and it will look and it will work out what code it is, making those tests very easy to create and very quick to build. And also when your application changes, you get all the the object repositories. So instead of changing it in 100 different tests, you can just change it in one place, and it will replicate across those 100 tests. So I think that's probably all we've got time for now. But I just wanted to hand back to Stephen to wrap things up.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob. As Rob says, that's all we have time for today in terms of questions, and thank you very much for submitting those questions. If you found that we didn't get around to answering your question today, please do follow up. Drop me an email. You'll see my email in a few seconds. Just so to wrap things up, in summary, in the short time we've had available today, we've tried to give you a rich flavor of what Mobile Center can do for you. Rob discussed at the beginning how it's all about user experience, and this is particularly true for mobile apps. We have covered many of the key benefits of Mobile Center. It's the ability to be the control center for your mobile testing, managing the mobile devices and apps available for testing. And it facilitates functional performance and security testing to ensure that your app is ready for live use. Once live, it can monitor your app and give you real insight into how it's being used and issues with it. You've seen that it fully integrates to HPE's suite of test and monitoring tools, and also many third-party mobile tools. The key reason for using Mobile Center is to drive a great user experience. For your customers, it does this by rapidly helping you ensure you've developed a quality app. Rob and I hope that you've enjoyed today's webinar and found it valuable. And if you're interested in discussing Mobile Center further, or any other HP tools, please do get in touch with me. I'm Stephen Davis from Calleo Software, and my contact details are on the screen now. When you exit, there will be a short survey. Please do give us some feedback. It will help with building the next webinar. Thank you guys. Thank you all very much for your time today.